What Chuck Schumer just outlined would take a Christmas miracle here, right? If you look at the 72 hours that Kailey mentioned, the 30 hours of debate required in the Senate, and not everyone's going to just let this go easily, right?
Well, if people want to drag it out, they have the option to, and there are very determined opponents to this. Congress makes the rules, so if they want to do it in less than 72 hours in the House, they can do it in less than 72 hours. If they want to do it in less than 30 hours, they can do it in less than 30 hours in the Senate. That said, particularly on the House side, there's some folks who are pretty determined. So it could drag out a little bit, but I wouldn't worry too much about that. It's possible that there might be a brief shutdown over the weekend, but that's not going to matter to very many people. The important thing here is they've got an agreement. There's enough support to pass it, so we know this will happen. If the government's shut down Saturday, Sunday, it's not going to affect that many people. Certainly not the economy.
So is it more likely they allow that very temporary lapse in funding to happen this weekend than to do another few days long continuing resolution, which would be what, the 5th, the 6th of this fiscal year?
I don't know for a fact, but I would imagine it's more likely they try to do a continuing resolution if they can. But either way, it's not going to have too much effect on, your portfolios or your life.
Once this is wrapped up, presuming that this is complete, we've got a funding mechanism through September 30. Arguably, this is a Congress that could do something else. And I think if the White House made its choice, it would be dealing with funding for Ukraine, for Israel, for Taiwan. To that end, we heard from the Defense Secretary today, Lloyd Austin, speaking to military leaders earlier in Germany about the need for help in Ukraine. Here he is.
I leave here today fully determined to keep U.S. security assistance and ammunition flowing. And that's a matter of survival and sovereignty for Ukraine, and it's a matter of honor and security for America. And make no mistake, Putin is watching, the world is watching, and history is watching.
Mike Dorning, there's a new push for a different approach here, thanks in part to an endorsement from Lindsey Graham. Donald Trump had floated this idea at one point, a no-interest waivable loan. Take the domestic money that goes to defense, put it into the factories here in the U.S., and send the rest to Ukraine in that fashion. Mitch McConnell doesn't like it, but does it stand a chance?
It's a possibility. I would think that purely for procedural reasons, there's going to be a real push not to do it. That is, you have to pass it in the House and then send it back to the Senate. There's a whole other can of worms you're opening if you do that. That said, what you're seeing here is signs that people in Washington are trying to find a way to bridge their differences and come to an agreement on this, that the momentum is moving towards some face-saving way for people to agree. That will play out in April. We'll see how that works in April, but it can move off the back burner onto the front burner when everyone comes back from their 2-week Easter vacation.
Oh, yes, because that's awaiting Congress when they wrap up.
The vacation comes first if you're in Congress.
There is always incentive to get things done when you're up against a recess. Mike Dorning, thank you so much. Elsewhere, both top presidential contenders were out on the campaign trail today. President Biden making the rounds in Nevada, Las Vegas, and Reno, and former President Donald Trump casting his vote in the Florida primary. For more, let's bring in Bloomberg's Wendy Benjaminson. So, Wendy, it's worth noting that these primaries are happening when both of these men have already locked in the nomination from a delegate standpoint, so perhaps it's the down-ballot races that are more interesting. In places like Ohio, where there's a Trump-backed candidate up against a more establishment candidate, how telling could those down-ballot races be?
They will be extremely telling, because what we have seen in midterms when Donald Trump was the president, and even since then, Trump-like candidates they may win primaries, they don't win general elections. And if your name, Donald Trump has won some, but any of the candidates that he endorsed who are, a little off plumb, in a way that they try to be Donald Trump, but they're not quite as charismatic as Donald Trump, and they don't tend to get through the general election. And that's why there are establishment Republicans like Mitch McConnell and people like that sort of warn against and don't endorse candidates like that. Now, Bernie Moreno is the candidate in Ohio that Trump has backed. We'll see how he does tonight against, some people that are doing much better in Ohio, even one who doesn't have any political experience.
Well, as we try to gauge the influence of Donald Trump on the primary circuit, we're spending another day talking about language that he's decided to use. In this case, in an interview last weekend, it was on the stump in Ohio, as a matter of fact. Today, it was in an interview on the America First program with Sebastian Gorka, who used to, of course, work for Donald Trump in the White House. Listen to what he said.
Any Jewish person that votes for Democrats hates their religion, they hate everything about Israel, and they should be ashamed of themselves because Israel will be destroyed.
I'll let those words speak for themselves. It comes just a couple of days after he referred to migrants as animals.
Right.
And, of course, the bloodbath remark. It's the former president wants the job again.
He does, and he seems to have begun the campaign very disciplined. He wasn't going to go off the reservation and say the things that he used to say. Remember it, he prefers candidates, not John McCain, because John McCain was shot down, or he insulted a grieving military family. But this time he was going to play it straight, and the staff was professional. They've run campaigns before. They were trying to, keep him with his sometimes unorthodox ideas, but his rhetoric was pretty, relatively standard. And, as my colleague Nancy Cook said, sitting right here last night, she pointed out that in the bloodbath comment, the teleprompter had broken. And it seems like the teleprompter is still broken everywhere he goes, because now, as you said, he's called migrants animals. He has suggested that Democratic Jews are loyal to Israel first, and should be ashamed of their religion. And if he keeps going like this, he also put out an unhinged statement about the civil judgment pending against him that he can't get a bond for. If he keeps going like this, the danger is that those Republicans and independents that he desperately needs to win election will just get itchy enough to either stay home or even vote for Joe Biden. And in a very close election, the wacky comments can really make a difference.